What's up, everyone? This is Connor with our next family movie night recommendation. This week, we're taking a look at a movie that is a little bit heavier than our previous recommendations. This week, we recommend Just Mercy from 2019. This movie is about world renowned civil rights defense attorney Bryan Stevenson, who worked to free Walter McMillan, a wrongly condemned death row prisoner. It is rated PG 13, but by the nature of the topic, it does contain some frightening and intense scenes. This may not be one for families with young children. We will include a full description of the rating from IMDB down below. This movie is currently free to watch from Google Play, Amazon Prime, and YouTube, and will be for the rest of the month of June. It was challenging to watch at times, but definitely something we all benefited from. We definitely recommend watching this movie with an open mind and be willing to discuss any questions your family may have afterwards. Here's our thoughts on Just Mercy. So this week, our family movie recommendation, Just Mercy. It's a bit of a heavy movie. So what did y'all think?
I am glad that I watched it. I don't think that usually enjoy watching movies that I know are going to make me cry because then I stay puffy. But I think that there's some things that are important, especially right now in the climate in which the United States is in, that we try to educate ourselves about the United States history in the last, I don't know, however many hundred of years, but the same things that happen today. And just watching this story, and it meant a lot to me also because I've seen Bryan Stevenson speak in person. So reflecting on the things that he was saying when he spoke to us at the youth gathering in 2018 and watching this movie, I could just see how and why he gets the passion that he has for people that are basically just thrown in death row and just left there like they don't matter.
For me, watching this movie from very early on, just frustrated, for Bryan Stevenson and as they depicted the situation. And I think, at one point they talk about that he's coming from Harvard, he's coming from an area, or they perceive that he's coming from a world that doesn't understand, and gets to share a little bit about that he does understand. He grew up in a neighborhood just like the one that he's working with now. We can look up more about Bryan Stevenson's history. I wish there was a little bit more in the movie about it, just to show that he has experienced this for himself, and he knows what this is like, and that's why he does what he does.
And the really interesting thing about it in the very beginning of the movie, you have to listen closely when he goes in for his first consultation in the jail. And I think Chloe can probably speak to it in what she's doing, is he was sent there as an intern. And this was something that grabbed him, and it was important to him, and it changed his life. So I think that as we expose ourselves to more and more things in life, whatever that might be, we have the opportunity to let the Holy Spirit change our course and use us for really important things.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really happy. As a white female, I don't know anything about Black brutality or Black struggles and challenges that they face. I think this is a really good movie that shows how much privilege white people have compared to Black people. And it was in the 80s, so that was 40 years ago. And so it's crazy for me to think and kind of wrap my head around is that nothing really has changed. And this is the same thing that we're protesting now, is police brutality, police being vicious and aggressive with criminals. And throughout this movie, you see that. I'm kind of glad that it didn't go into Stevenson's history at all, because this is very much about how an inmate on death row didn't do the crime at all. And so I'm kind of glad that it only focused on McMillan and stuff like that. But it was definitely hard to watch, but I definitely wanted to, like you were saying, Sean, I wanted to watch it because it's so important for us to educate ourselves on it.
It is, and I think that even people my age have a different perspective than, let's say, a 13 or 14-year-old has right now on racial equality and things like that, because hopefully as parents, someone my age, we're doing a better job than our parents did. And watching something like this movie together creates really good conversation and can help us to not just see a perspective, like cops are bad, or, you know, because in this movie you see that there were police officers that
tried. Yeah.
Their opinions shifted as they watched what was happening around them. So it's a great movie to start conversations, not just from mom or dad's point of view, but we can be taught by our children amazing things. I've been learning so much from my teenagers in the last month, and I wouldn't have thought that would be the case, but it is.
Yeah. And that point, for me, rings true, you know, bringing another movie, Zootopia, which is one of my son's favorite movies. You know, Officer Hop's parents learned to trust and expand their business with a fox because of that same thing. You know, they credit her with expanding their horizons to accept a predator, to accept somebody that they typically wouldn't have. But I mean, that's just fresh in my mind because we watch Zootopia every day at this house. So, did either of you learn anything during this movie?
I did. My perspective on death row inmates were always, oh, they're murderers. They've done something that the jury has decided that they deserve to die for. That's their consequence. And watching this movie, it's completely flipped in my entire mind, and I really had to sit and think about what I really believed about how I perceived people. Because the one man that was executed, he was meant to be in a hospital. That should have never happened. He had PTSD. There was other not excuses, but there was other things that was going on in his life that wasn't addressed. And so I think that we always think about death row inmates as the lowest of the lows. That's how the movie depicted, and we forget that they're actual people. We forget that in that scene of all of them rallying together when people leave death row is crazy, that they're people, they have relationships, they want to be loved, they want to be listened to, they want to be believed. And I think that I always kind of forgot that they're humans, they have the same feelings that I do. So I think it was good for my perspective was definitely changed.
And there was a statistic at the end of the movie, and I didn't go back and watch it, but it says for every one person released from death row because they were innocent, nine are executed. That's very, very sad. It's like who you know and how much money you have kind of determines your fate in these situations. If you're innocent, if you're guilty, if you have good representation or bad representation, we'll see what happens, is kind of how it was in my mind when I saw that. And some of them, some of the death row inmates were represented by people who said, just, this is the best you're going to do. Just sit there and be quiet. And then they didn't do anything.
You could see the frustration on his face. I felt just tense during so much of this movie. Like, what do you mean this isn't going to work? What do you mean that they can just deny that evidence? What do you mean they can just turn this away when to everybody who really looks at it, it's obvious?
And I think that living in different parts of the country too must be so different, because he was coming from the New England area and moving down to Alabama. And when he was confronted with racism in Alabama, he was like, this is really happening. It's crazy to me to think that we live in one United States and there are areas in, I'm going to cry now. This movie is a tearjerker. There's areas in this country where even though we're supposed to be in the land of liberty and freedom, people are not treated the same. And it's great. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason.
Yeah, and I thought that was especially true whenever it was in Monroeville, wherever the To Kill a Mockingbird was, and they kept on bringing up that reference. Oh, you should go to the museum. You should go to the museum, but not them realizing. And I think that's kind of what our country is in now, is finally realizing, oh, that cop is actually racist, or that person is racist towards that person, even though we are living in a civil rights history book for the most part in literature. And so I thought that was a really interesting thing that they took that book and put it into this movie.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part for the town, like a justification for their actions. They're like, well, we're not racist. We've got, this is where Harper Lee was from. This is where the book was written. We're not racist, but we have these legitimate reasons for what we're doing. Makes it easy to justify those beliefs and those thoughts, when you can kind of balance the scales in your mind, but that doesn't make it any more right. It doesn't make it any better. So do either of you have any final thoughts to share on the movie Just Mercy?
Keep an open mind about watching this movie, because if you feel yourself changing your perspective, the movie's working.
Yeah, and I would say that a lot of people don't consider themselves racist. I don't know that I know anyone who would say, I'm a racist person. I think I know a lot of people who do not think that they have a problem with people of any color other than their own. They're just, I love everyone. But what this movie shows is, I think, how we are so oblivious to the struggles that people of other colors are faced with, and we don't get it, we don't understand, unless we are educated, unless we try to understand it, unless we try to learn about it and know about it.
I think for anyone who's going to watch this movie, I'd highly recommend it. I think not only is it a great movie, a great cast, it's an enjoyable movie to watch. I think it does a great job of being a movie, aside from being a history lesson. But anybody who's going to come to approach this movie, just do your best to let go of anything you may think you know about the situation. Do your best to relate to Brian and the characters that he's working with, the people that he's working with, and just see things from their perspective. I'll admit I didn't know the full story going into this movie, so this was kind of my first exposure to this whole story. I think it said the last trial was in '93, so I would have been 2 years old at that time. Yeah, it's a heavy movie, but I think it's a good movie to be exposed to. It's a good movie to just take some time to talk about. So, and that's why we want to have a conversation. So,
yep, absolutely.
So those are our thoughts on the movie Just Mercy. You can find this movie to watch on Google Play, Amazon Prime Video, and YouTube. Be sure to check out the description below for some resources to keep the conversation going with your family. And make sure you subscribe to our channel to stay up on the latest stuff from HSLC Soulfire. Thanks for watching.